Let's talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. Now, my FOMO has reduced quite a lot since Time Out became a fraction of the publication that it once was. I used to love getting Time Out on a Wednesday and picking all the things I wanted to do. And actually, if I think back, I used to circle them, with a pen, sit in bed circling them. And then actually when I think back, I realise that I never did many of those things, partly because I didn't have enough money, but also because I often was too hungover and too drunk. I won't tell you how many times I booked really exciting courses and day events on a Saturday and never, ever, ever made one of them. City Lit must be going, it's another 50 quid from Laura Willoughby for a day course on how to make yourself perfect that she's missed. So I was surrounded by great things to do that used to make me excited, but it was never quite enough to get me over that hump of realising that if I had a hangover, I couldn't manage any of it. And I would often choose activities that involved drinking rather than the great things that were in there. Although it did take Time Out as one of the catalysts that helped me change, because one day I went and sat with a hangover, feeling very miserable and very down, and went through Time Out and saw a production of a play that I always wanted to see, which was Metamorphosis. And I booked tickets last minute and went to see it with the most raging hangover I've ever had in my life. And I sobbed afterwards because I just felt I'd just seen the most amazing piece of theatre, and I cannot fully engage with it because I am so hungover. So FOMO can mean many things, and you can have a fear of missing out, but still miss out because you're hungover or you're thinking about drinking rather than the event. And I want to come back to that a little bit later, because I think we need to be honest with ourselves about FOMO. Yes, Kafka. Actually, being a big drinker and having lots of hangovers is a very Kafkaesque experience. You're sort of reliving the same nightmare time and time again of a hangover and missing things and not doing things and guilt and regret. I am Grigor Samsa. But what is FOMO, fear of missing out? Well, I think the most interesting thing about the word of FOMO is the word fear. It makes us do things we don't necessarily want to do because we're afraid we're going to miss something amazing. And I have to tell you that you may think some things are amazing, but if you look objectively at them, they're not really. There isn't anything that is so special that you would really be missing out if you didn't go along. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But when you're giving up drinking, because we're denying ourselves something, the place that we always went to do the thing that we're trying to avoid doing suddenly takes on magical properties. Oh, I can't believe I can't go to a party, or I don't want to go to a party, or I might miss a party because I'm not drinking, or because I'm not doing something, and it just won't be the same. But actually, if you objectively think about it, you can talk about the number of parties you've been to that were actually dull as ditch water, and they were only survived by the fact that you were drinking. And then the following morning you felt like a twat. And then you can't remember anyway any of the conversations you had. And really what's happening is that little inner critic in your head is going, but you're missing out on life. And for now, because I've asked you to give up drinking, you've asked me to give up drinking, life is defined by these events that have got drinking at them, which you now have to avoid. All those other things that you were thinking about that constitute your life, like walks and going shopping and spending time with people, they are no longer the fun things. They're things you do without drinking. Actually, the thing that you're missing out on are these amazing parties that were amazing and super, with hundreds of millions of great people at them that were the joy of your life. But if you think about it, they never really were. I suspect as we've all got older, parties have got stranger anyway, because a whole group of people who don't drink anymore, drink less, or have got kids, or decide that their responsibilities are more important than 2 bottles of wine, have left the party early anyway. You end up with people that you don't really know and feeling awkward, and then drinking too much and feeling hangover. So just remember, when you've got FOMO, what it is that your brain is really telling you you're missing out on. But it can lead you to some really unexpected behaviours. So you sit there and you go, oh, right, I want to go to a party, but everyone will be drinking, so I want to avoid that party, but I'm going to miss out, and so may be there. You don't know for definite, they may be there. You suddenly get an anxiety, and this makes you unfocused, this makes you quite stressed, it makes you procrastinate, and you could spend a week, 2 weeks procrastinating over a party that you think you might want to go to. Then you should go to it, then you're not really sure if you want to go to it, you're not sure who else is going, you start asking other friends if they're definitely going or not, they're also non-committal, so you're still not quite sure. And I've done this myself recently. In the end, I ditched out of a party the morning of the event because it made me feel so anxious in the run-up to it that I was thinking about it all the time. Actually, the whole stress around thinking about an event where I wasn't sure if I did or didn't want to go, whether I'd be missing out or not, was completely ridiculous. I don't know why I did it. So it leads you to feel anxious, to feel stressed, and to procrastinate, which makes that whole thing feel worse. It blows up this idea that you can't make a decision about going to an event into this big thing in your mind. Also, FOMO makes you spend money or break goals. I talk about spending money because it makes you do things that you're not sure that you really want to do because you feel you'll be missing out because everybody else is doing it. But for me, that's not as important as the drop in your goals, because you're continually oscillating between, I should go, I still want to party, I don't want this to, I don't want to not drinking mean that I miss out on things. It will make you make decisions about going to something, possibly unprepared, possibly with a sense of belligerence, because you feel that you don't want to miss out, when actually, at this point in time, your goal is probably the most important thing for you right now. And instead, your brain is conflating this event as being a big deal breaker and something bigger than it really is. And it can create a really big sense of overwhelm. So even before you've got to this event or thought about this party or thought about this thing, and let's be clear here, you don't get this feeling of FOMO and overwhelm about anything you're doing that doesn't have alcohol associated with it. Those you're completely less stressed about. It's the ones with alcohol that we feel very keenly in our first few months of giving up. And so we begin to stress about it and get anxious about it. That in itself is a trigger for drinking. It may even make you feel like drinking before you go to the event. And then it plays into the hands of your inner critic, who's going, yeah, see, you don't want to be a boring person, you want to go out and have fun. So why don't you just go out and drink at this event? Or go now and, don't plan, just go. Or oscillate between decision making and feel very stressed about it. So what do you do about FOMO? And I'm just checking that none of you have put any advice of your own down there. Well, I think there are a couple of things to do. One is recognize what's happening. FOMO is a fear. What's happening is because you're presented with an option, an event that you normally would have gone to and you normally would have drunk at, where people will be drinking and people will expect you to drink, where you'll have to talk to new people. You have created FOMO, which is that you want to go somewhere, but you're also anxious about it. You want to go somewhere and you don't want to miss out, but equally you don't want to break your goal. You can see how really terribly conflicted this whole thing is. So first of all, recognize that actually that's quite normal when you're going through a change process where you're presented with something that might challenge that process, and begin to recognize the internal dialogue that's going on in your head. And really recognise you might even want to write out the things that are going on in your head, reasons why I should go to the event, reasons why I shouldn't go to the event, reasons how I could go to the event, without drinking and breaking my goal. What's so amazing about this event that I think it has this magical power that must make me break my goal, or will challenge me to break my goal. So first of all, start going through all of those things in your mind. I find it an interesting process because I do it with the theatre a lot, and now my budget's slightly more curtailed. I don't go to the theatre as much, but the minute something was on, I'd be going online, I'd be trying to find the cheap tickets, I'd be going on and seeing how I can get an alert. Every Friday I'd have in my diary the Friday rush for the National Theatre, because I don't really want to miss out something in the National Theatre. La 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 la. It created a huge amounts of stress inside and made me make really hasty and ridiculous decisions. So first of all, notice what's going on in your head. Is this the thing that makes you the happiest? And actually, Sophie's just said that. Think about the people close to you who are the happiest. Are they drinking every night? Or are they healthy, sleeping? You know, are they actually the people at the party that you're used to seeing? Are they the ones that are always there? Probably not. So first of all, be aware that there's an internal dialogue going on in your head because you've got the fear of missing out. The second is to be honest with yourself and to others. So first of all, do be honest with yourself. It's a party. It's a party in a house. If you were really to spend time, if you were to really say in an ideal world, the person whose house that you're going to the party at, or the persons whose party it is, if in an ideal world, how would you like to spend time with them? The answer is probably, you'll probably like to sit down over a cup of coffee and have a nice conversation with them, or go and do something nice with them. So they might be having a birthday party, but if you were to really say, how would I like to celebrate their birthday with them, you might actually have an idea that's a lot nicer. How much time will you actually see that person at a party? Probably not as much as you think. The second is there may be other people that you're going there to see. Are there other occasions that you're seeing them? Is this the one and only opportunity? And it might be. So, you know, be honest about that too, because that will help you make a decision about what you do. But, you know, how important is this? And as Linda says, she's got a big event, which is a wedding, and so you don't want to miss those big life events. They're important to people, although they're important to those people, and whether you're there or not is another interesting debate. It depends on the type of event. So do begin to have an honest conversation with yourself and others. So if you've got a partner, rather than signing off, which I do often, which is say, yeah, we're coming to a party, and then when I actually speak to UC, he goes, well, why would I want to go to this event with lots of people I don't know? Why don't you just go on your own? And actually he's right there too. My desire for FOMO isn't the same as his desire to, you know, these are people I don't know. So start to have an honest conversation with yourself about what it is you want, who it is you're spending time with, how you'd ideally like to spend time with those people. What does this event really mean for you? If it's a big party, does it really matter if you go or not? If it's a small intimate thing, then, you know, put it in a priority order of how important it is to you to spend time with these people, and then you can make a decision about whether you're going or not. So I'm not saying here don't go to things at all. I'm saying just put them in context. Not everything is number one high priority. You can actually put them in different priority order. Not every friend is high priority. Not every social invite is has to be answered and said yes to. So begin to unpick some of this and think about what it is that is really driving you to go. Is it because you really want to go, or is it because you'll feel guilty if you don't? And I think that guilt of not going to things is quite strong. And I've learned that actually if you talk to people and explain, they don't really mind if you're not going or not. They would like you there, but they don't necessarily want you there if that's not what you want to do with your time. So I'll come back to that again in a minute. Ooh, Mark's got a stag do. So Mark's got a stag do and Linda's got a wedding. Wait a minute, I'm going to have to write this down. Wedding, stag do. Okay. Anyone else got an occasion? Write it down. And it's interesting because Sean has talked about having FOMO when you were sat in a pub garden, and I get that the times I have FOMO aren't in the big parties, they're the small little occasions with actually 2 or 3 people, and I feel I'm missing out on the drink on those. Okay, so let's carry on. So so what was I saying? Yeah, be aware that you've got FOMO, that you've got fear of missing out. Be honest with yourself and others about what this event means for you, what this set of circumstances means for you. For an occasion like Sean's, when it's actually just that fear of being sat somewhere when you normally would have drunk and thinking, oh, I want to be part of this now. Just be aware of it, understand that feeling you're having, be aware that your inner critic is actually trying to challenge you and get through your battle defences. And we can talk about how to deal with that in a minute. And look at what you're really going for and what you want to get out of an event. And actually, if you want to go somewhere like a wedding and generally spend time with people that you haven't seen for a long time, maybe meet some new people who mean a lot to the people that you know that are getting married, then actually being sober could be an amazing experience. And also New Year. All right, Linda, we'll come back to New Year. And Christmas, possibly. Just writing that down, Okay. And I'll come back to Coral's example in a minute. So be aware, be honest with yourself. Then make a quick decision and stick to it, because the worst thing that you can start to do is procrastinate about something you want to go to, or actually if you're in the here and now about something you want to do. The biggest problem is if you look at Alison's example this week, she flipped and flopped between driving and not driving to something, because in the back of her mind her inner critic was going, but if you don't, it's cheap enough to take a taxi, so if you don't drive, then maybe you might just have a drink. Be aware that the more room you give for your inner critic to push all your little buttons, the more stressed you'll be, the more that might mean that you might break your goals before you go to the event because you're stressed and you're anxious. But it means that you're more likely to break your goals when you go to the event, because you're flipping and flopping about whether you go or not, rather than thinking, right, I'm going and now I need to develop a strategy. Or I'm not going and I need to speak to my friends and tell them why. So take a quick decision and stick to it. And that way the procrastination won't stress you. You can begin to plan for whichever part of the decision that you've made. Then the final part, I think, is about reframing events. Now, if you think about it, we've got... society has a pretty standard definition. Here is a party. This is what a party looks like. You will go have fun. Hooray! You will stand around with lots of people with warm wine in a plastic glass, and this is fun. You will... I mean, why are we even worried about missing out on that? That's quite absurd. Or, you know, if you really think about it, our definition of fun linked to alcohol is just completely bonkers. Where was I the other day? There was something where it was actually a place where people know about alcohol and problematic alcohol, and everyone was still saying, right, and now we're going to end with celebration drinks. And those celebration drinks were wine and warm orange juice. I mean, what's celebratory about that? That's shit wine and shit orange juice. Celebration to me is cake. So we've got some strange social norms about what celebration and what partying and what events mean, when actually, like I said, if you begin to reframe in your head about what does spending time with people mean, what does quality time mean to me, then that becomes a really different proposition. So start to reframe it. Why are you actually going? Are you going to celebrate somebody's birthday? Are you going to celebrate their wedding? Is it a big milestone? Each of those things demand a different response for you on why it is that you're going and what's important about your attendance at that event. So you can begin to say, well, actually, I'm going to the wedding because I want to celebrate somebody I know very close, they've got a big life milestone. They've invited me because they want me to witness that, and they've invited me because they want me to spend time with them. They haven't invited me to get hammered. They haven't invited me to wake up the following morning and have a hangover. They haven't invited me to treat their free bar as if it's going out of fashion. They've invited me for actually very different reasons. And so why don't I go with my intention based on that, rather than based on the fact that society says, well, hey, this is great, big knees up and everyone should get absolutely trolleyed. So start to think about how you're going to tackle the event based on why you're going. You're going to spend some nice time with people, some whom you don't know, who you can begin to get to know. Nobody says you have to stay up late at a wedding and in the hotel. You could go to bed early and take advantage of the facilities. There are no rules about these things, people. Break them up and do what's right for you, and begin to reframe that event in your head. And then you can begin to create a new definition of joy. And I'm going to come on to some tactics in a minute, so I'll pick up some of the questions that you've done, but I want you to begin to reframe what joy means in your head. So instead of fear of missing out, you can have JOMO, the joy of missing out. So that could mean that joy of not staying up so late that you don't make the breakfast in the fancy hotel the following morning at the end of the wedding, because actually you would quite like to do that, because there's nothing more joyous than waking up with a clear head on a Sunday morning, somewhere new, where somebody's going to bring your breakfast to you on a plate. You haven't had to cook it yourself. They've probably got the newspapers. You can stick your earphones in and listen to the radio if that's good for you, but you're in somewhere lovely where people are going to wait on you hand and foot. Why would you miss out on that? So actually your joy is, there isn't a fear of missing out on the drunken revelry come midnight. There's the joy of all the other things that you can do instead. There is actually great joy to going, well, actually tonight I want to stay at home in my pyjamas and my woolly socks. It's because my feet are cold, I think I said woolly socks. And I want to just watch something on telly. That's warm, that's joyous, that's comforting, rather than standing up in a room with strangers, all with warm wine breathing cheap wine fumes over me. I'd rather, sit at home, because that is joy, that is fun. You can also realise that there's something I don't think I've ever said out loud to you guys before in the webinar, which is when you say yes to alcohol, what is it that you're saying no to? And actually that's true. If you're saying yes to going to this event, or if you're saying yes to having a drink because you're feeling you're missing out, what is it you're saying no to? Well, you're saying no to a bright, sunny morning where you can do something nice. You're saying no to curling up with a book in bed before you go to sleep. You're saying no to actually eating something healthy rather than getting a kebab on the way home. When you say yes to alcohol, you're saying no to many other things that are also give you deep joy. So have a little think, what is it that you want to do with your week ahead? Is this event that you feel that you're missing out on the most important thing? And if it isn't, actually think about, what it is that you find joyous instead. What can you say yes to instead of this that will fulfill you and make you happy? You can also, it's also important to remember that you can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything. There isn't enough hours in the day. There isn't, some of these events will come along again. There will be another party. There will be another theatre trip. There will be another day sat in a sunny garden. There will be all of those things. They're not. You just can't do them all at once, and so you need to pick your priorities, but remember that these things will come up again in the future, and you begin to pick and choose some of the better things rather than the worst things that you want to do. Sorry, I'm going to consult my notes. I don't know, this is me consulting notes. I do think about this stuff, don't just make it all up. If it's saying no to something bad, I'm doing really bad. Yes, if you say yes to everything, then you don't ever begin to find the events that you will really enjoy the most. and accept that sometimes you'll miss out on some things, and it's absolutely fine. I was to the party that I was anxious about recently. I kept flipping and flopping about it, and it made me really anxious, and I felt like I was being a really terrible friend. And then I contacted that friend and I said to them, I really don't think I can come. And I told them very clearly, I'm feeling actually very anxious about it, and I think I would rather spend some time with you on your own. And she came back to me. It's actually Hannah, whose picture you see all the time at the top of the Club Soda stuff. And she said to me 2 things. One is, she said, you must treat yourself with consent. You go to what you want to go to, because not what you have to or that you think you have to go to. You need to be kind to yourself and treat yourself with consent. And secondly, let's arrange some time to get together one-on-one. If you want to spend some time with me, that's absolutely fine. So actually you can, you know, replace that fear of missing out with something that you would prefer to do instead. And rather than angsting about the thing that you're not sure you want to go to or don't want to go to, arrange the thing that you know you definitely want to, can do, and won't break your goal. So it is in effect a bit like riding discomfort when you're desperately wanting a drink and can't, while desperately wanting to do things and not doing them, or desperately wanting a drink and not doing them, is a form of discomfort. You will ride that discomfort. It won't kill you. The world won't be ablaze with this amazing event and how wonderful it was and how awful it was that you weren't there, because it just doesn't happen. People will go, yeah, it was an all right party or whatever. So I'm just having a little flip through and seeing what everyone says. Excellent. You're sharing stories of FOMO and dealing with that. You had to be there stories are nearly always totally rubbish. It's true. And in fact, they never, the retelling of you had to be there stories, they're never as good as the people think they were. And you did actually have to be there in order to understand why something's funny, because context is everything in those occasions. And it doesn't matter that you missed that contextual piece of banter, because you'll create new contextual bits of banter that you're involved with. Then we're not involved with every single funny event that goes on in life anyway, so you're not really missing out. So learn that discomfort. So I wanted to talk a little bit about tactics and how you deal with it. So we talked already about being decisive. Now, there are 2 things about being decisive. You either need to be decisive because you're trying to cultivate and protect your goal and you're feeling vulnerable. So really what you're looking at is an avoidance tactic. And the other is a tactic that says, I just don't want to do these things, is the other thing about I don't want to do these things anymore. And I need to find some new things to do with my time that fill me with joy. So the first tactic is about how you and the other tactics about how you actually go and escape, really. So first of all, make a decisive decision. You're going or you're not. You know, you're driving or you're not. You're giving all your best friends a piggyback there and back or not. It doesn't matter what you do, but make a decision and make it happen and stick to it. If you feel you need some extra help to stick to it, then you can put in some things in place, like make sure your food delivery is coming at 10 p.m. or on a Friday night, so that you know you have to get back for it, because nobody wants to miss a car day, do they? Or make sure that you go early and you leave early. Make sure that you've got something planned for when you get home, and that you've got treats, that you feel that you've treated yourself in the evening when you've had to leave early. Put in place a plan for your evening that means that you know what time you're going, what time you're leaving, how you're getting there, how you're getting back, how you're going to reward yourself for being absolutely bloody fantastic. And then you've been to an event, you've shown your face, and you've gone when you've wanted to. And you don't have to force yourself to go if you're enjoying yourself without drinking. The other thing is Sam talks about doing an Irish goodbye, which is you just don't say goodbye. And I've done that a lot more recently. And instead I will say to the host of the party, look, I'm probably going to leave earlier than everyone else. So I wanted to come early so I could talk to you a bit more. And then when I leave later, I'm just going to go without a big goodbye, because I don't want people to go, oh, why are you going? Stay for a drink. Because everyone does that, even though they don't actually want you to stay, because they don't give a shit. So just go, but let them know that you're saying hello and goodbye in advance, and you've come to spend some time with them at the quality part of the evening. And you know what? People don't turn up early to parties. They always turn up after they've had a few drinks somewhere else first. Your host will probably be really pleased that you're one of the earlier people and get to speak to you. So, do it that way round. That to me is a lot more joyful. Then make sure that you've got your reward and your treat for when you get home. The other is to make sure that you recognise that this is your inner critic, and if you feel you'd be swayed at an event, then I still recommend take your own drink, phone up in advance if it's a wedding and say, look, I'm on an alcohol-free diet. I would like to have my own alcohol-free wine. Could you put it in the fridge for me? And if they say no, say, well, I've been to weddings before, it's not unreasonable. Request, I'm happy to pay 50p corkage if you can just keep my bottle there, and so on. Actually, places will be really accommodating, and if they don't, they'll set Shay or me on them. But ask. If not, take your own stuff in your bag because nobody really cares. Take a small bottle of cordial, pimp your own water. So make sure you've got some things in place to deal with that point that Sian talked about, which is where you're sat with a load of people drinking and thinking, I either need to be in this or out of it. I want you to resist that temptation, because I'm going to tell you more about how you then make the most of those occasions. The first is there will be loads of other not drunk people in the room. You just don't notice them because they're sat, trying to banter along. You need to be brave, go and speak to people. If you're at a wedding, those are people that share something in common with you, which is the bride and groom. Go and have a conversation with them about how they know the bride and groom, what's the context, work out how many times removed you are, it won't be that far. And strike up conversations with people you've never met before. Be brave. That's far more productive to be fearful about than missing out on drinking. A little bit of fear will get you a long way in a conversation. So be curious about other people. If you want to, you can also, if you decide not to go to an event, then think about how you might want to spend some time with the person whose event it is on different terms. So if a friend's got a birthday and they're having a big house party, to be honest, they didn't really interest me anymore. And so I would rather arrange a time to meet that person for a drink and do that in response to the party invite, and say, actually, I can't come. You don't have to give a reason. I can't come. Could I, meet you for a drink at another point? Could we go for a snack? Could we go and attack some street food? Could we go to the cinema? Could we go bowling? Could we go to the theatre? Could we go and see a concert? Could. The list of things that you could possibly do are endless, and they all sound far more interesting. The £15 you would have spent on taking 2 bottles of crap wine to that party can be spent on something far more enjoyable and productive. So get your tactics in place if you're definitely going and if you're not going. And for all those people who think, oh, this all sounds really terrible and boring, I don't want my life to change at all, I will tell you this, which is I believe you can still go out and party and have a great time and spend time with people and still be a social butterfly. It will take you some time to feel comfortable in your sober skin in social events when other people are there. But I, for the first few months, felt I was really dull and boring and left even earlier than I do now because I just felt also quite awkward. But it's all those occasions where I felt awkward that meant the day when I just felt like myself again in a social situation, like I was witty and funny, I hardly noticed, and it suddenly happened like it was a broken limb that had been fixed. So see going to those events and feeling awkward not as a sign of this is what the rest of your life's going to be, but instead as a sign that this is a process that you're going through, that you need to go through to get to the other side. And yes, your social life will change, because you know what? Your social life was different when you were 20 to when you were 30 to when you were 40 to when you're 50. It's a natural course of things because you have more money to enjoy different things, to go out for dinners or to go to the theatre or to go to the cinema more often. You have that your life does change, and so the fact that you might go earlier, leave earlier, not go to some parties, take people for dinner instead, it's just an evolution of your social life. and it's an evolution of your friendships, and it's a deepening and strengthening of those friendships, and also the deepening and strength of who you are as a person, because every minute you spend with somebody when you're sober is a moment that you're there in the present, engaged and taking part, and you will remember it the next day, and that is far more fulfilling than a fleeting conversation with someone you hardly know where neither of you remember it, and then you've got a hangover the next day and you don't get to enjoy a single moment of the next day because you're sat on the sofa feeling like crap watching Charlie Chaplin movies, or even worse, Come Dine With Me, which I used to do. So start to reframe what your social life is in your head. Realise this is an evolution. Realise it's not for the things that you have to avoid now, you don't have to avoid forever. This feeling of awkwardness isn't forever. This is something that can develop and grow. You're fixing something. It's like a broken limb. It's a broken bit of your personality that needs to be, first of all, taped up before it can be fixed properly. I'm going to stop wittering now because I've talked 45 minutes and that's quite a long time, and I also want you to go away and think about this. Maybe we can come back and do it as a topic. But Sophie's asked, why do the chicken feel awkward at parties? To get to the other side. She's here all week. Actually, she's been here for months and months. I think that one needs, the setup and punch needs working on that one. Excellent. If anyone else has got any questions on this subject, I'm happy to pick it up. Again, we've got some blog posts about it around, but I will dig them out for you. They'll be easy to find on the new website. Otherwise, if anyone's got anything we want to cover next week, will you let me know? But think about your social life. Make it something that's truly joyous and not just artificially because society tells us it should be that way, joyous. Okay, bye.